welcome to our next episode of the Hormone Café. Today we're going to talk about a hot topic, and that is protein. Protein is absolutely one of my favorite topics. So today we're going to go into why is protein important, how much protein should you be getting, where should you be getting this protein, where should you not be getting this protein, and how to incorporate protein practically into your diet. Protein is one of these things that's becoming huge. You can get protein foam at Starbucks now. You can even get protein beer. Asterisk, there are bad ways to get protein. So we'll talk about those and go into what are the good ways to get protein and what are the bad ways to get protein. So in the first place, why is protein important anyway? Protein is composed of the building blocks of all of our cells, and that is amino acids. So we think about protein specifically supporting things like our joints and our muscles and in our reproductive system are the integrity of our uterus and our uterus lining, our cervical mucus. Basically, every single cell is made of amino acids. So when we think about protein, we think about the building blocks of our cells. So that's why it's so important to have protein and why we care. So how much protein should we be getting? What's too little? What's too much? Traditionally, just completely a standard number of protein that you should be getting. You want to be getting around 80 to 100 grams of protein a day. Now that does matter on your body size. If you're a smaller person, you're going to need less protein. If you're a bigger person, you're going to need more protein. And if you're exercising more, especially if you're burning down your building blocks, for example, if you're really sick or if you're working out really hard or you're a person who works out a lot or you're trying to build muscle, for example. So any cells in your body that you're trying to build, you're going to need more amino acids, you're going to need more protein. So you have to be careful because I would say most women are actually eating not enough protein. So it's important that we do a little protein audit and see how much protein we're getting. But sometimes people are eating way too much protein. So we have to remember that men need more protein than women because I have some patients who are eating more than their body weight in grams of protein because that's how much they think they should be eating. However, more is not better. If you eat too much protein, your body will just go ahead and convert that protein right into sugar. So more is not better. Please don't eat too much protein because if we're eating too much protein, sometimes people say, oh my gosh, I'm eating all this protein. Why aren't I losing weight? Well, it's because your body's just converting that right back into carbohydrates. And so that's why we're not losing weight. And we have to remember men are testosterone mediated and we need a lot of protein in order to make testosterone. Women are estrogen mediated. We need protein to make estrogen, but we don't need as much protein. So we don't want to look at our male counterparts and think that we need as much protein as them. Women need a happy medium of protein, not too little and not too much. And my favorite what we want to think about are how much protein do we need throughout our day. So in a perfect world, we would be getting 20 to 30 grams of protein each meal. And then my favorite other times to eat protein are before you work out, you want to have a little bit of protein and a little bit of carbohydrates. And some people, including my husband, for example, who's a runner, say, oh my gosh, Dr. P, you're crazy. He doesn't call me Dr. P. He calls me Sarah. He says, I can't eat before I work out. But sometimes if we work out fasted, then our blood sugar will actually go up a lot. Because if we're fasting, then our body's in starvation mode and our liver is making its own sugar. That's a process called gluconeogenesis. And our liver will make a lot of sugar, and that will spike our blood sugar. So we oftentimes don't want to work out fasted. We often want to work out with protein and carbohydrates on board. It doesn't have to be a ton. That can look like a half a piece of toast and a beef stick or a scoop of quinoa and some cheese. But my favorite time to eat protein is a little bit of carbs before a workout. And then also for my body especially, it's really important to eat a high protein snack in the afternoon because I found that I was getting really bad carbohydrate cravings right after dinner. And if I eat a high protein snack sometime in the mid-afternoon, I really prevent those afternoon slumps, and then my sugar cravings really go away. So those are two of my absolute favorite times to really eat a lot of protein. And then the other time that can be really important to eat a lot of protein is some people find that their blood sugar either gets really high all throughout the night or gets really low right when they wake up. So this is where continuous glucose monitoring and blood sugar monitoring can come in handy to help us develop a more personalized profile of how much exactly protein do we need to eat, when do we need to eat protein. Because I just had a patient the other day who was having really, really low glucose right around 5 and 6 in the morning. And it was actually really affecting her sleep. And she was waking up early because her blood sugar was really low. So I had her eat a high protein snack right before she went to bed. And she found that she could sleep that extra hour because her glucose wasn't plummeting. So right before bed can be a time to eat a high protein snack. So how should we get our protein? The number one way that I need you to get your protein is through food. Okay, food is the most important. So when we think about the best protein sources, meat by far is our best protein source because it has the most protein and it's the best absorbed. So we'll talk about meat, dairy, and plant-based protein sources. Not that you have to eat meat. It's just that if you're vegan or vegetarian, you have to try way, way harder to get in protein because it's so much easier to get protein through eating meat. So for example, I'll give you some examples of different foods and how the different protein amounts that they have in it. So grass-fed beef, for example. So when we think about 3 ounces of cooked beef, so that's about the size of a deck of cards. That's going to give us about 20 to 25 grams of protein. A beef stick, which is one of my favorite go-to snacks, is about 5 to 7 grams of protein, depending on the brand. And then wild caught fish. So think about salmon, cod, halibut. 3 ounces is going to be about 20 grams of protein. So sometimes we think, oh my gosh, it's really going to be hard for me to get 20 to 30 ounces of protein per meal. But when we think, okay, if we have a little salmon fillet about the size of your hand, it does not have to be a huge volume. We do not have to be stuffing ourselves. It's actually maybe a little bit easier than you think to get in your full 80 to 100 grams of protein a day. So when we think about a chicken breast, so about 3 ounces of chicken breast, that's also going to be about 20 grams of protein. A small egg is going to be about 5 or 6 grams of protein. So that one I feel like is a bit tricky because when we think about breakfast, if we're only eating 2 eggs for breakfast, we're only getting about 10 to 12 grams of protein. So we usually want to, it's really hard to eat 4 eggs for breakfast. So a lot of times when we're doing eggs for breakfast, we usually have to pair that ideally with a meat to get a full 20 to 30 grams of protein in. So a great option could be like some eggs and some turkey sausage. Greek yogurt, my favorite, is full fat, plain Greek yogurt. Yes, plain. Please avoid the flavorings. So about a 3/4 cup of yogurt is about 18 grams of protein. Of course, that depends on the brand, but that's the average. So it really doesn't take that much yogurt to almost get to 20 grams of protein. And then we can pair that yogurt with other things. So nuts, seeds, chia seeds, flax, berries for those antioxidants, that kind of a thing to really round out our breakfast in the morning. Cottage cheese is a fantastic source of protein. A 1/2 cup of cottage cheese is about 12 to 14 grams of protein. Personally, I don't love cottage cheese, but for those people who do, great source of protein. A slice of cheese, just one slice of cheese or a cheese stick, has 6 to 7 grams of protein. So cheese can be a fantastic source of protein. Some other creative ways to get protein are lentils. Lentils are very helpful. 1 cup of lentils is almost 18 grams of protein. So it's kind of like our yogurt. And then 1 cup of beans is about 14 to 16 grams of protein. So that's a way we can get fiber and protein. When we think about our snacks, a handful of nuts is about 5 grams of protein. 1 tablespoon of peanut butter is about 3 grams of protein. So that just gives you an idea of, okay, how can we get this 80 to 100 grams of protein into our day? So when we think about 30 grams of protein, what does that look like? Maybe we have 5 ounces of chicken on a salad at lunch, 5 ounces of salmon at dinner. Maybe for a snack, we have a cup of cottage cheese. For breakfast, we do a cup of Greek yogurt, and we can even scoop some collagen or some other protein powder on there. Or for breakfast, we could be doing 3 eggs, 3 ounces of turkey sausage. That's how we can get our 20 to 30 grams of protein in every single meal. And that's kind of how we want our day to look like. So let's talk about where you shouldn't get protein. So number 1, I really want you to be getting protein from your food, from whole foods, from meals. Sometimes people say, okay, Dr. P, I'm just not going to have protein for breakfast. So the second way I want you to get protein is from protein powder. However, we have to be very, very careful about our protein powder. 95% of protein powders out there are full of crap and junk. Your protein powder should not taste good. Brownie batter protein is a huge red flag. Think about our protein sources that we just talked about. Grass-fed beef, chicken, eggs. If you were to ground up an egg, it should not taste sweet. If you were to ground up a chicken, it should not taste like a brownie batter smoothie. If you are drinking a protein powder or eating a protein powder and it's just by itself and it tastes sweet, that's a huge red flag. Your protein powder shouldn't taste sweet. So when we're looking at a protein powder, we really, really need to look at the ingredients. You want your protein to literally have one ingredient, and that is protein. So that can be collagen protein, whey protein, vegan-based protein like pea protein, hemp protein, pumpkin seed protein, but you just want it to have one ingredient. Protein powder nowadays has all of these additives. So there's tons of antioxidant blends that they'll put in protein powder. And then there's different sweeteners. So erythritol is a big one, maltitol, sucralose. If it has a flavor at all, I guarantee it has some sort of crappy ingredient that you want to stay away from. And then you really want to watch for things. Sometimes they'll say, oh, no artificial sweeteners, but then they'll have stevia and monk fruit. Stevia and monk fruit are not your friend. They are sweet and they're put in there and designed to make it sweeter. So please, 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 no stevia, no monk fruit, okay? So you have to be really anal about your protein powder. That's why I get nervous about flavored protein powders, protein shakes, because if you're just mixing protein with water, I guarantee it ain't gonna taste good. So you either have to put it with something else like milk, or put it into a smoothie, or put it on yogurt or something, because if you're having a shake or you're just mixing your protein powder with water and it tastes sweet, that's a huge red flag. So number one, you need to try to get all your protein from food. If you can't get it from food, that's where we can put in our protein powder, okay? The other way that's very common to get protein is from protein bars. I really hesitate from protein bars because, again, 95% of protein bars out there have tons of crap in them and they have way too much carbohydrates. So a lot of things that are marketed as protein bars will have 37 grams of carbohydrates and only 17 grams of protein. Okay, that's 20 grams of protein that you need to eat with that bar just to balance out the carbohydrates. So watch when it says protein bar, your ideal protein bar is going to have a 1-to-1 ratio of protein to carbohydrates. So the protein needs to be higher or equal to the carbohydrates. And then you really have to look at the ingredients. A lot of times your protein bars are going to be sweetened. So if they're sweetened, you want it to have the most natural, actual food sweeteners possible. Things like cinnamon and cacao, and not things like stevia, monk fruit, and you really want to watch the sugar content. You also have to watch for sneaky things like dates, for example. Sometimes bars that are made of dates can have up to 40 grams of sugar, or figs are equivalent. Figs can have about 30 or 40 grams of sugar. So really be careful of your bars. Even things that seem natural can actually have a ton of sugar in them. So please watch for the preservatives, your xanthan gums, your guar gums, things like that. Sometimes those can be good because those can be a source of fiber. So that can be okay. But we want to make sure that we watch for those artificial sweeteners and those extra sugar. So when you look for a protein bar, please make sure it has a 1-to-1 ratio of protein to carbohydrates, and that you know what all the other ingredients are, and it doesn't have a lot of sugar or artificial sweeteners. Because sometimes people will say, Sarah, I just need something really, really convenient. I'm not going to be able to make breakfast in the morning. I'm on the go all the time. I just need to have a protein bar. Of course, in a perfect world, we would get all of our protein from food. However, I totally understand life happens. We get busy. We need something very, very convenient. So then you just want to really get a high quality protein bar so that you're truly giving yourself enough protein and it's not backfiring by giving a lot of carbohydrates and sugar. Where you shouldn't get protein is, guys, if it's too good to be true, then it definitely is. So protein beer, for example, no go. Just because it says protein in the marketing does not mean it's good for you. So stay away from things like Starbucks protein foam, protein soda. Not that you can never have those things, but you don't want to eat them thinking that they're actually healthy for you. Like they legitimately are a treat, okay? So we can eat those things as a treat, but personally, if I want to have a treat, I just want to have a treat, right? You don't have to be adding a bunch of fake sweetened protein to it. So we talked about protein powder a little bit. Let's talk about what you should look for in a protein powder. So the most common protein powders out there's 3 different types of protein powder: whey powder, collagen powder, and plant-based protein powders. So let's talk about whey. Whey is an excellent source of protein powder. So when we think about protein has 9 different essential amino acids. The great thing about whey protein powder, it has all 9 amino acids. And it can be really well absorbed and really help with muscle building. The only thing that we have to worry about whey is that it is dairy based, because whey is a dairy protein. So for people who are sensitive to dairy, you want to be careful. You probably don't want to incorporate whey as a protein powder into your diet every single day. You probably want to rotate it with other powders, or use whey, for example, when you're having a really, really hard workout or you're trying to build muscle. And then we have our collagen protein. Collagen is really essential for our skin, bone, and joints. And it does things like prevent prolapse, because collagen is in ligaments that help hold up our uterus, for example. However, a bummer about collagen protein, it doesn't have all 9 essential amino acids. It has 3 amino acids. So collagen is lovely. It's a great source of protein. However, it's not a complete source of protein. If you do 1 scoop of collagen powder, it's not an equivalent, for example, of eating a chicken breast. So collagen is great for building our skin elasticity, but we just don't want to be using it as our exclusive and only source of protein. And then there's our plant-based proteins. So plant-based proteins are a little bit less well absorbed, but they're still absorbed well in our bodies. And when we think about our plant-based proteins, they're usually coming from rice-based protein, bean, hemp, and then seeds. So like pumpkin seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds, things like that. And in order to have all 9 essential amino acids, oftentimes those plant sources have to be combined. So for example, a pea plus a rice protein, that will have all 9 essential amino acids. So what I actually recommend doing, if you're able, is buying all those different protein powders, so whey, collagen, and plant, and then rotating them, because that makes sure that your body isn't having any digestive issues from the whey protein. We're supporting our ligaments, bones, joint health, skin with our collagen protein. We're getting some plant-based protein. So it's helpful to have different protein powders and to actually rotate them throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, so that we're getting as diverse of a protein source as possible. And it is helpful, for example, if you're to use protein powder to supplement your protein. So if you are eating breakfast and you just don't have time to have a huge breakfast, you can have a tiny scoop of yogurt, throw protein powder in it. One of my favorite things to do is to put collagen protein powder in my coffee, because you can't taste it at all. It doesn't taste chalky. It's not gross. And it's just a great way to get an extra 20 grams of protein. And then when we think about protein, we want to use protein in a balance. So for example, carnivore diet is really popular right now. However, it's very restrictive and it's very single mindset. So when we think about balancing and nourishing our hormones, and we want to really think about food diversity. So we don't just want our sole nutrient source to come from protein. We really want to have a balance. So when we think about carbohydrates, for example, we want to have a 1-to-1 protein to carbohydrate ratio. So when we look at our plate, we want it to have a healthy protein, a healthy fat, a carb, and a veggie. So that might look like some salmon as our protein, some quinoa as our carb, some avocados for our fat, or maybe some kale that's cooked in olive oil for a fat and a veggie. And then we can have any kind of vegetables: kale, spinach, asparagus, Brussels sprouts, tomatoes, green peppers, cucumbers. All kinds of vegetables are helpful. So that's the kind of thing and the balance that we want to think about every single meal. So yes, protein is important, but protein has its place, and we do need all the other things. So we need the vegetables for the vitamins, antioxidants, and fiber. We need the fat because cholesterol and fat is the cornerstone of hormones, right? We need the carbohydrates because carbohydrates actually have essential B vitamins that are important to making estrogen. So we can't just do protein. We want to think about protein as being in balance with all the other things that are so important for our health and especially our hormone production. So there you have it. That's my soapbox about protein. If you have any questions, please message us on Instagram. We're at Vera Fertility. If you're wondering if you need somebody to help you make a specific personalized diet and protein plan tailored to you, please don't hesitate to reach out. I want you to go home today, audit your protein. Make sure you're getting 80 to 100 grams, not too little, not too much, and that you're diversifying your protein sources and getting a good amount of protein throughout the day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, high protein snack. I am here for you. I wish you the best. Thank you so much for joining us today, and join us on our next episode of the Hormone Café.